You can watch the full documentary, Tulsa, The Fire and the Forgotten, tonight on your PBS station. And joining me now to talk about the legacy of the Tulsa Race Massacre is Tiffany Crutcher. She is a native of Tulsa and a civil rights activist who is working with the Black Wall Street Legacy Festival. Her twin brother, Terrence Crutcher, was shot and killed by a police officer in 2016. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for being here. What's been the lasting impact, you think, of the Tulsa Race Massacre when you think about the harm done 100 years ago and the consequences that we still live with today?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Yamiche. Man, as I sit here on the actual centennial, the 100-year anniversary of the worst racial terror attack on U.S. soil, I can't help but reflect back on and just think about my great-grandmother and the fear and the terror and the pain and the trauma that she had to endure fleeing for her life and running for her life. And fast forward close to 100 years later, I can't help but think about today, my brother, Terrence Crutcher, who was killed by the same police department. So today has been somber. It's been a bittersweet moment. We just finished paying homage to all of the lives that were lost, over 300 that we know of. We believe that there were more. The fact that we have to do this and commemorate, that's the bitter part. But the sweet part was being there with two of our last known living survivors, Viola Fletcher and Hughes Van Ellis, who was a World War II veteran. Just having them there and knowing that they survived, it's a really special moment.
And you brought up your brother, who was unarmed and was shot less than 3 miles away from Black Wall Street, which of course was destroyed during the massacre. Talk a bit more about the connection you see between Terrence's death and the violence Black people experienced during this massacre and other massacres that we don't talk about.
Absolutely, and I can't really talk about the massacres and the experience that Terrence had to endure without even talking about what happened on January 6th with the insurrection. I mean, it brought back memories. It brought back, the stories of the mobs of white rioters that fled into a Black prosperous community and leveled it to the ground, shot innocent men with their hands in the air, doctors and lawyers, didn't render first aid. And then in Terrence's case, I see that video of police officers fleeing towards Terrence, a mob of white police officers, and Terrence wasn't doing anything, helicopters looming, saying that he looked like a bad dude. The parallels are so stark. And then I think about January 6th and the mobs that stormed the nation's capital. Nothing has changed. The residual effects of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 still reverberates through history and through my family's traumatic history today on the 100-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about January 6th, there are recent things, of course, the massacre being 100 years ago, but there is also highway construction. There's gentrification that has forced Black people in Tulsa into other areas, something that we've seen all over the country. Make that connection to not just the massacre, but what happened even after that.
We were known as Black Wall Street. We had economic enterprise, and we were robbed of our generational wealth. But 100 years later, the railroad tracks that divided South Tulsa, the white side of town, from North Tulsa, those tracks still symbolize the same thing, the racial divide, except we have nothing. We own nothing in this historic community. Gentrification is running rampant. All you see are high rises and condos and restaurants, but none of it is owned by us. And we believe that it's shameful. And our kids' life expectancy is 11 years less on the Black side of town than a kid's life expectancy on the South side of town. We live in food deserts. We've been left behind simply because of the residual effects of the 1921 race massacre.
What do you think needs to be done for the descendants of the victims and the community more widely when you think of the massacre? And is there a way to get enough people to decide on what reparations might look like?
I must note we have 3 last known living survivors that are still here at the age of 107, 106, in the 100 years old who recently testified at the nation's capital. And I yield to them. And what they said we needed was justice, reparations, atonement, repair, respect. And they have yet to receive that. And that trickles down into the descendants. We've filed a lawsuit against the city of Tulsa, the county, the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce, and nothing has been done. But I will say this. At the ceremony that we held today, the general, the major of the Oklahoma National Guard was there. And he stated that they didn't do enough to stop what happened. And he gave an official apology to the survivors and to our community. And it was an emotional moment.
And a new bill banning the teaching of some race concepts in Oklahoma schools was recently signed into law. What impact might that have on the ability to really face the ongoing harm of the massacre and violence against Black people?
We think that the bill that was recently signed into law by Governor Stitt is simply shameful. We know 100 years ago there was a conspiracy of silence. My great-grandmother never talked about it. So many other folks, Mother Fletcher, they didn't want to talk about it because they told them if they did, they would be next. They would be lynched next. And it wasn't until I went off to college that I learned about it. And again, we think that is shameful.
Well, thank you so much, Tiffany Crutcher, an activist in Tulsa whose brother was killed by the police. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much, Yamiche, for having me.